Hi, my name's Nikki. This is the Interventionalist, and today I'm going to talk about how to figure out potentially if you're a lesbian versus a bisexual. I had quite a few messages recently of people asking if I had any advice when trying to figure that out, and it's such a hyper subjective and personal experience. So there's no obviously like objective guidebook to figuring it out, but I thought I would share my experience and like how I sort of began to figure out like, oh shit, like I am a lesbian. And maybe it'll be able to like shed some light regarding your own experience. Maybe it'll be helpful. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about that. And first, I just want to say that it is such a personal experience. And for example, I'm a sexual person. I'm not asexual. And so that does play a role in my sexuality and figuring it out, which I think like is important to note because I think it probably would be different if that wasn't the case. Okay, yeah. So I was thinking about it and I was trying to remember like what were some major indicators that I just had no attraction for men, that there was like never going to be any attraction for men. And the first thing that came to mind was how exhausting it was, like trying to date and trying to be romantic and trying to like have romantic experiences. It was incredibly exhausting. And it's because the entire experience always consisted of a lot of overthinking. And I had to expend a lot of intellectual energy, particularly because every single thing that I did with men was based on me adhering to whatever script that I had, because I had no emotional intuition or like attraction driven intuition, like that physical intuition that can come with dating a romance when you are into somebody, when you are attracted to them. I didn't have that. And so when I was like on a date with a guy, for example, or I was like, we were talking, for example, like in high school, nothing that I did felt natural. And because it didn't feel natural, it required me to think a lot about it. And that was exhausting. It was never easy. It never felt seamless, I guess could be the word. Like every single thing that I did was so pre-thought out that every experience I had was never something that I could just be present in and enjoy because I was always in my head. If I was on a date with a guy, I was constantly in my head, like intellectually trying to navigate the situation based on what I knew and like what I knew from my friends and what I knew from media and like what would be the right next step. How should I behave? And even though like I had scripts in my head that I could follow from being raised in such a heteronormative culture and environment, it still like was really difficult for me, particularly because I didn't know when to like, what would be the word? I didn't know when to practice certain aspects of the script. Like for example, if I was on a date with a guy and you kind of like naturally like fall into these different, I don't know, moments and experiences, like when you're into someone eventually like you naturally like start to feel drawn to them in like a physical way, which can lead to like reaching for their hand, like holding their hand, or wanting to touch them. I don't even mean in like a sexual way. I just mean like wanting to be like near them that way, like maybe be shoulder to shoulder, like you want to be close. But I didn't have any of that like intellect, any of that emotional drive. And so even though I knew like here's like some general aspects of a script to follow, like you go on a date, then you like hold hands and then you kiss and then you like all this stuff, it was all like jumbled in my head because I didn't have like the emotional intuition about where to place these things, or like the attraction driven intuition that would like help me maneuver the situation and figure out when to behave, like, or when to like put these into practice, right? Assuming these are all things that I was going to do or like had like an inclination to do. And I would be on these dates and I'd be like, am I supposed to like, what the fuck am I supposed to do right now? Like, am I supposed to like start to like be closer to him? Am I supposed to like be like all this stuff? Like, I don't know. I relied really heavily on like following, not like, it's so interesting because I would have to rely on following the lead of the guy I was with, particularly because I didn't know what the fuck to do. So they had to initiate everything, which I think is really important because now that I do date and I date people I'm attracted to, it tends to be the opposite in my situations. Like I tend to mostly be the person who like makes the first move, who initiates things that, yes, we can like adhere them to a script, like you do this and this and this. But like in a situation where it feels right, you kind of like naturally become inclined to act in these certain ways. Like you hold their hand, you want to like kiss them for the first time, you want to be closer to them, all this stuff. Now like that comes so naturally to me, like it just feels like a natural intuitive inclination to do these things. And I also feel a sense of fluidity regarding it. And I think that's important too, because when I was in these experiences with men, because it was so rigid in my head about what the next step was that I needed to do, how I needed to respond to them, how I needed to act, all of this stuff, I was so rigid. And so I couldn't embrace the concept of fluidity, which I think is a really big indicator when I look back now, because when I see relationships, any relationships, I think now there is no script that anyone needs to follow, right? Like every relationship is so specific to the people in the relationship, and there is no guide that you have to follow. There is no objectively right way to do a relationship, or how a relationship needs to look. But when I was dating men, because it was so intellectual and because I had no emotional intuition or that like physical, I keep thinking of the word primal, that's literally not it, but it might be like that, like just really intrinsic desire based out of attraction, or inclinations, intuition based out of attraction, like physical attraction. I had to adhere to a script. I had to be very rigid because I couldn't figure out how to potentially, I didn't have like the emotional guide or the guide based from attraction to help me maneuver a romantic situation in a subjective way. Because when I go out with people now, it doesn't look the same. Like the script, so to speak, is written with each person that I'm with. It feels like, yes, there's some things that we kind of like tend to, I don't know, usually be inclined to do with each person that we're attracted to. Like for me, like eventually, like, I don't know, that can fall within the script. Like I want to hold someone's hand. I want to take them on a date here. Or like I don't know, those kind of actions. But when I'm with someone that I'm attracted to now, I can be present in the moment because there is like an emotional and sort of like physical factor that grounds me, because it's undeniable because I'm attracted to them. If I'm not attracted to somebody at all, like even if it is like a woman, then I do have to kind of like adhere a little bit more to a script just on a first date. I don't know, because I'm not feeling like any emotional intuition. But when I'm attracted to somebody, I just feel this sort of like emotional guide that feels really easy and seamless, and I don't really have to think about. And I think when you're driven by some form of attraction or emotion, you don't have to think as much about it, because it does sort of give you that gut feeling. And it is those gut feelings that I think can guide us through situations, especially romantic situations, kind of like reading the room, but also helping you figure out how you feel. And I think that's important as well, because now that I have like an emotional response to the person that I'm with, I have like the physical indicators of attraction, like my heart like beats faster when I'm around a girl that I'm attracted to, or like my palms will get really sweaty. I'll get like nervous, like my breath will pick up just because I'm nervous. Like those are things that happen when I'm nervous, but I'm excited. And it's like a bit exhilarating to figure things out with a woman. And as like I write the script, or we write the script with each moment that we're together. With men, there wasn't of that like emotional intuition, that like a guide of attraction. And so I didn't have any of these like physical potentially indicators. And so it was exhausting to try and like figure out how to go forward. And then I didn't know how I felt because I didn't have any feelings about it. So I didn't have any like indicators to figure out how I felt. And so it was always so confusing because I was trying to like determine what meant that I was or wasn't into a guy based on nothing. And that's difficult to do because I didn't think that I was aromantic or asexual. And then it got to a point where I was like, maybe I am, or maybe I'm not. And I just hate this stuff and I don't want to be romantic or sexual with anyone, even if I had the capacity for it. Because I had no emotional or physical response to them in any way. I didn't have any of that pull that I feel towards women, that I'm capable of feeling towards women, which like will guide me to eventually, I don't know, naturally feeling that like desire to want to hold her hand. I'll be like, wait, shit, like I really want to hold her hand right now. And that leads me to like make that move eventually. And I feel that like intuition, I feel that pull towards her. And it makes the situation so much easier to navigate because I have a guidebook internally to follow. And it feels so much more natural than like trying to intellectually apply like a really rigid script to every single romantic situation I was in, because that doesn't always feel right, because romantic situations are always going to be inherently fluid because they're not objective and they're different depending on the two people who are in them, and it's never the same for two people. Like, one romantic script that gets developed with a girl that I'm with is not the same as it would be for another. And so because romantic situations are inherently fluid, because they're subjective to the two people, I needed to be able to practice that fluidity or be open to that fluidity, and I needed to be able to navigate that fluidity in order for like a relationship to work. But I couldn't do it with men because I had no emotional responses that would like indicate what my next move should be. I only had the intellectual knowing. And that's also exhausting. I mean, overthinking in general is incredibly exhausting because it expends a lot of emotional energy, or not a lot of intellectual energy. And it requires a lot of like, I don't know, psychoanalysis, overanalysis. And then it just leads to you wondering what the hell is wrong with you, because why is this so hard for you? And it seems so easy for everyone else. Like, and also just wondering what is wrong with me in general, because all of these things that other women I'm around talk about when they're around men, that like leads them to want to do these things with them, like be excited to have a first kiss with a guy. I don't experience that. I was never excited about that. Like, another thing when I look back now and I compare it to who I am when I date now, when I date people that I'm attracted to, it is so different, because not only am I someone who does initiate things, I don't mind being someone who initiates things. I also wanted to, because I was excited about the situation and I wanted to figure out what happens next, or like figure things out like with this person, like, I don't know, sort of write the script presently in the moment. I was excited about it because I liked her and I like wanted, I don't know, I wanted to get to know her, and there's things I wanted to do because I liked her, and like, I don't know, I wanted to hold her hand, right? Or I think I'm like, oh my God, like I really want to kiss her. And so that would lead me to being somebody who does initiate things, because I was excited about what those experiences would be like. And with men, I was never someone who would initiate things for reasons that I've already talked about, because I didn't know when the hell to sort of place those like behaviors or those actions that I like sort of intellectually knew occur in romantic situations. I didn't know when the hell to place them intuitively, but I also didn't want to. Like, I didn't want to experience any of those things. Like, I didn't want to hold a guy's hand. I didn't want them to kiss me. I didn't want to kiss them. See, that's the difference. Even when I say that, I'm like, I didn't want them to kiss me, because I can't imagine a situation where I would ever be the one who wants to kiss them. And so I would never imagine initiating that if I could avoid it at all costs. So I think when I look at who I am in relationships now and like my behavior and how I tend to behave, it's so drastically different than how I behaved with men. Like, here's an example. Here's something that I can remember where that was really evident. When I was 13 or 14, I don't know, maybe like 7th grade, this boy in my class asked me to be his girlfriend. And I said yes, because we were friends. Like, I liked him as a friend, genuinely. I did like him as a friend. And he asked me, and I remember feeling like sick to my stomach afterwards, like after I said yes. Even in the moment, it felt like it just came out of my mouth. Like, I couldn't control myself because it felt like the right thing to do. There was a bunch of people in our class watching, because it was like, oh my God, like they're gonna be boyfriend and girlfriend. It's such a big deal. And I said yes. And then afterwards, I was so bothered. The only thing I can use to describe that feeling was like deep annoyance, and feeling slightly offended that he would ever think that I liked him romantically. That is like a really major feeling that I had towards men when they would, I don't know, be interested in me or pursue me. I felt both annoyed and offended. And I felt offended that they thought I would ever be romantically interested in them. And that wasn't like subjective really to the person. It was more so just like an objective thing I experienced with men. It was like, why would a man ever think that I was interested in him? Sorry. And it's just because I could never imagine that. I could never even imagine that occurring. So why would they ever think that that was the sort of vibe that I was giving them that like bothered me, you know? Because it was so inconsistent with what I felt internally. And he asked me to be his girlfriend. And so then we were like boyfriend and girlfriend. And then the second that happened, I didn't want to be anywhere near him. I mean, like literally we were friends. We went from being friends and like hanging out in the same little friend group. I went to a tiny school. We had maybe like 10 kids in our class already. And I didn't want to be anywhere near him. I avoided him at all costs. Like, if he was coming in the direction that I was with my friends, I would go in the other direction. Like, I didn't want to talk to him. Suddenly, like, being around him was really, I was like, oh my God, like, what do you want from me? And I remember one time he was like texting me like after school, and he was like, I really want to hold your hand. He was being sweet. He was like a sweet guy. He was being sweet. And he was like, I really want to hold your hand. And I was like, like, okay, like, sure. And that's such a big deal when you're like 13. Oh my God, this is like embarrassing to remember. And so the next day at school, I was leaving to go back to class after lunch, and you have to walk down this like giant ramp. And when we were walking down it, he like came over to me, and he obviously wanted to hold my hand, so I immediately put my hands in my pocket, and he was trying to talk to me, and I just wouldn't look at him. And then he was like, can I hold your hand? Like, can I please hold your hand? And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like, no, like, this can't, I don't want to do this. And I said, sure. And so I like took my hand out of my pocket and I let him hold it. But I remember just feeling so like, I just wanted it to end. And it only lasted maybe like 30 seconds anyways, but I wanted it to end so bad. And I think that just really speaks to the fact that I did not want to do any of this stuff ever. If he didn't really like try to initiate that, if he didn't like come find me when we were walking back to class after lunch, if he didn't actively ask that, I was never going to do that. That was never going to happen. We could have dated for the rest of our lives, and I would have been happy never letting him hold my hand, never touching in any capacity. And so if he didn't like actively go out of his way and have to like go so far as to like ask me, even though it was sort of like a natural thing that would have like naturally occurred if I was into him, I wouldn't have done it. He had to like really go out of his way to like step by step be like, oh, I'm interested in holding your hand. Then he had to come find me because I would avoid him. And then he had to like try and sort of get like closer to me to let it happen naturally. And then I would just put my hands in my pocket and like avoid him. Then he had to ask. And then I was like, sure. Like, he had to actively initiate every single little step that led up to that, because I would have never taken sort of the natural bait, I guess, like what comes with like a natural intuition or a natural inclination. That would have never came to me. And so I would have never been able to just like sort of naturally intuit the situation and lead to us just like holding hands without having to make it sort of a thing where he had to ask. And as a result, I was never somebody who initiated things because I couldn't like naturally emotionally intuit it. And I also would avoid it at all costs unless he like really went out of his way and I felt like, okay, this is the right thing to do. I have to do this. Like, I know that this is the right thing to do. And so I said yes, letting him hold my hand, because it felt like I knew it was like the right thing that we're supposed to do. Now we're boyfriend and girlfriend, and you're boyfriend and girlfriend, and you're supposed to like hold hands at the very least, or hug. I wouldn't let him hug me. And I just didn't care if it ever happened. I didn't want it to ever happen. So I was never going to initiate something like that. And I also just didn't understand emotionally the importance of like being emotionally romantic with somebody, or like romantic gestures. For example, oh God, this makes me feel terrible. Just know that he and I stayed friends after this, and I did apologize to him multiple times for years after this. Okay, we were in 7th grade. I remember it was my birthday. I think I was turning like 13, maybe I was turning 14 in 8th grade, I don't know. But him and his dad showed up at my house, and my family's house is like down a giant driveway. And one day I see him walking down this driveway, which is also a little bit weird that they just showed up. They could have asked. And I see them walking down the driveway, and I know that he was there because I could see the birthday present. I knew he was there, like, I don't know, to be sweet for my birthday, but I was like, oh my God, like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Like, this is the most like inconvenient thing ever. And I don't want to have to pretend like I know what to do. And so I sprinted downstairs because I was upstairs, and I ran to my dad, and I was like, I'm not even close with my dad. And I said, you have to cover for me. It's like, you have to cover for me because I can't do this. I don't want to see him. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he saw them walking down, and he's like, well, you need to talk to him. It's your birthday. He has a birthday present. And I said, no, like, you need to cover for me. And so I ran back upstairs, and I turned the shower on, and I stayed in the bathroom. I didn't even go in the shower. I turned the shower on, and I listened to them talking downstairs. They stayed for like 30 minutes trying to give me this present. It was him and his dad. It was really sweet. Like, I feel so, And I stayed in the bathroom for like 30 minutes, and eventually I heard them like start to leave, and then I watched them like walk back up the driveway, and they left. And then I went back downstairs to my dad, and I was like, oh, like, what'd they say? And he was like, they were just waiting for you. He really wanted to give you this present. Wanted to tell you happy birthday. He's like, what is wrong with you? Like, why did you do that? And I couldn't answer. I had no answer. I was just like, I don't know. And then I just left, and I opened the present. I don't remember what it was. I think it was a book or something. I would never do that. I would never do that now for so many different reasons. But I wouldn't do that now because I am like I would say a very romantic person. I love romantic gestures. I love being romantic to people. I really like romantic moments, and I love spending time with the people that I'm interested in. And it wasn't even like an anxiety, like I was nervous because he was like coming over and I really liked him. Because when it's an anxiety where you're excited, it like pulls you towards the situation despite the fact that you're nervous. It's a little exhilarating. But when you're anxious because you don't want something to happen, it pushes you away from the situation. And that's what was happening and led me to running upstairs and hiding in the bathroom with the shower turned on. And I still feel bad about it because he was being like a sweet guy trying to be a boyfriend. We were like young kids. And I felt bad about it in the moment. I knew that I wasn't being a good girlfriend. And I didn't know why. Because I liked him before that. I really liked spending time with him. We were friends. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't be a girlfriend to him. No matter what I did, like I couldn't get myself to care about him the way that I knew I was supposed to. And I couldn't get myself to care about or understand the importance of like doing things that a girlfriend would do in like a romantic way. And because of that, it made me like a bad girlfriend. And we were kids obviously, but still like little things like that, like gifts, things like Valentine's Day, like getting each other Valentine's Day gifts. I didn't understand why it mattered. I didn't understand the importance. And so I had no emotional drive to do those things, even though I knew like logically I needed to. I just didn't know why it mattered. Like, why was I doing this? Because it didn't matter to me. And if I didn't really have that rigid script to follow, I would not have done it. I would not have gotten him like a Valentine's Day present because I just didn't get it. Didn't mean anything to me. And I felt bad about that because I knew that this isn't what a girlfriend was supposed to be like. And I remember when we did end up breaking up, it was because he like had sent me a note in class or something and he asked what was wrong. I don't remember. It was something like that. And when I did break up with him, I remember telling him that like, I'm not the girl for you. Because I don't remember what exactly happened, but I think he told me he loved me. And that was when I broke up with him, or it was like a couple days after that. But it ended up with me being like, I know you think you love me, but I'm not the girl for you. Like, I'm not right for you. I can't be what you need. That was sort of what I ended up telling him in note form in response to whatever note it was that he sent me, and then over text as well. Because he tried to like not have us break up. And I actually do feel bad about it. We stayed friends for quite a while after that as well, like up until I think like sophomore year of high school. And I did apologize to him like multiple times. I felt genuinely bad. And he was like understanding. I wonder if he would know now, if it would make sense to him if he found out that I was gay. He's probably really homophobic, so I don't know if it would. But it would probably make sense to him. But I felt really guilty because I knew that I wasn't supposed to be this way. I knew that this isn't what a girlfriend was supposed to be like, and I didn't know why I was so bad at it. And I didn't know why that I didn't care about being good at it, or why I couldn't figure out how to be good at it. And when I look back now, it's because I genuinely had no emotional attachment to the situation. I had no drive driven by attraction or emotional attraction, physical attraction, nothing. And so when it came to doing anything romantic for this person, for a man, I couldn't get myself to do it. I didn't care to do it. I didn't understand the importance of it. And I would have avoided it at all costs unless it was like very persistently initiated. But when I was with women and when I fully embraced just like dating women, even when I was nervous, I was so excited. Like I was overwhelmed with that like sensation of attraction, like wanting to be around someone all the time. Suddenly I understood. I suddenly understood why my friends who were straight wanted to be around the guy they were seeing all of the time. Like they couldn't help it. It felt like this enthralling and sort of involuntary pull towards this person. And suddenly when I was dating women, I felt it. I felt that involuntary pull towards this person. Like I couldn't avoid it. I couldn't deny it. I wanted to be around her all of the time. And I got it. And so many things in my life clicked about why being with men never made any sense, because nothing about it felt a little involuntary. Like my want to be around them might want to do nice things for them, might want to hold their hand, might want to take them on a date or go on a date with them, I guess. Like none of that was there where I almost couldn't deny it. But when I was with women, it felt like this involuntary, oh my God, I want to take her on a date. Like, oh, I'm like, I want to hold her hand really bad. Like all of that was so physical. It was such a physical sensation. And that's such like a grounding thing. To feel something physically is in a very weird way, even if it's overwhelming, grounding, because it really grounds you to the present moment, because you can't think your way out of it. Like no matter what you're thinking about, there's no denying the physical sensations. And so there's no way to avoid thinking about that exact moment rather than like thinking of all the abstract things about the moment, like the rigid scripts that were in my head. All I could think about was the exact moment in time. Like, okay, I just like got this really like strong urge to hold her hand. Think about, is it the right moment? And then do it. Versus like, okay, like I think that he's trying to hold my hand. Let me think in my head if that makes sense and if there's any way that I can get out of it or there's any way I can push it down the line. Like I was thinking of everything around the moment to make sense of it versus like being in the moment and just having like sort of no choice but to live within it, which sounds cheesy, but it really like forced me to live in the moment because attraction is so sort of all consuming. But yeah, I think those were like the major indicators when I look back now. I think something else that can be really important is if this is like really stressing you out and you might feel like really avoidant to intimacy in general, like any kind of intimacy, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, any kind of intimacy. I think it can be really difficult then to navigate figuring out any kind of label at all. And so sometimes I think it can be helpful to sort of work through those intimacy fears first before trying to like try and find a label for yourself or seek out a label, so to speak. I think something really important when it comes to figuring out anything related to your sexuality, particularly when it comes to like getting to the point where a label feels right, I think is really embracing experiences, like external experiences related to like your sexuality, like going on dates with different people, and going into that with like going into it and fully embracing the fluidity of the experience and embracing fluidity in general related to the people you're dating and who you're dating, because it is through having all of these different kinds of experiences that I think eventually you sort of, a label will kind of fall into your lap, because with enough experiences you will start to see naturally what you are drawn and not drawn to. But that comes with experiencing things. So I think if it's just something that's really overwhelming and sort of confusing to you right now and stressful, that could be really helpful, is just like embracing potentially the label, fluidity, being fluid, and allowing yourself to embrace all of those fluid experiences. And from there, allowing yourself physically to maybe see what you get drawn to or what you get sort of a little bit averted to. And I think that can help you fall into a label, or it finds you, like it falls into your lap. That's kind of how I feel about labels is that eventually it kind of just finds you and it feels right, but it comes with enough experience that you're able to really identify with it or understand what it means for you. And for me, like all the experiences I had with men, like eventually just added up to the point where it was like being a lesbian just kind of fell into my lap. And then when I did realize I was one, I felt this immense, overwhelming relief when I like heard the word lesbian, when I used the word lesbian. But it took a lot of just like exhausting and what felt like endless experiences with men that got to a point where there was no denying it. This wasn't working. And when I found the word that described why, or could like validate what I was instead and why it didn't work and like what that could mean for me, it felt like a relief. And so suddenly the word lesbian felt like salvation and like a safe space, because I didn't have to try anymore. There's a thing for this, for what I am, and I can be that. And I don't have to work so hard to be something else and like force myself to fit something that always feels uncomfortable, like something like, I don't know, like a jacket that's too tight versus just one that fits kind of just right. It felt like an immense relief. I'll never forget that feeling. I made a video the other day talking about kind of like when I realized I was a lesbian, and it was listening to You're So Gay by Katy Perry for the first time. It was like, you're so gay, you don't even like boys. And it was that moment that the word lesbian like popped into my head, and I just felt like this overwhelming, incomparable relief, and things just felt right. Like things just suddenly felt right. But that did not feel right until I had enough experiences where I could not deny how wrong being with men was. Like being the concept of lesbian, I made a video on TikTok talking about this the other day. The word lesbian used to make me feel like very ashamed because it felt like I'd really failed. Like when it came, I don't know, like when it came to being a good person or doing the right thing, it felt like being a lesbian would mean that I failed because I wasn't attracted to men at all. And I felt like if I could be at least somewhat attracted to men, then I could cancel out this bad part of myself that was attracted to women by being attracted to men, and it could like cancel out and I could just embrace this one aspect and maybe I could still be good. And so being a lesbian felt like a failure. That word felt like something I couldn't be. It wasn't an option. And then I tried so hard to be this other thing, to get it right, that it became so exhausting that this word just felt like a safe haven. And I think that can be like an indicator when you get to a point where it feels so undeniably, involuntarily right. And while you are figuring it out, I think it's important to remember that you don't ever have to use a label at all. Like you don't ever have to have a label to be valid in your sexuality, to be valid in your queerness and your gayness and your sapphicness. There's no label necessary for that to mean something, to be just as valid as somebody who does use a label. And while you're figuring it out, and whether or not you end up feeling like you identify with a label or not, I think it's important to be kind to yourself, because when you're hard on yourself when it comes to like figuring out your feelings and your emotions and your sexuality, I think it only further inhibits you from being present enough in the moment to actually like feel. And I think that's something that's so important, is being present enough in the moment to feel, because it is through our feelings and our reactions to things that we can kind of identify things about ourselves. Like the way that I was present in the moment with women and I felt it helped me figure out that I was a lesbian, versus with men, I was never present in the moment. And when you're overthinking, I think anything, but particularly you're trying to like overthink and compare these two experiences, how you felt with men versus women, and you're in the moment and you're really hyper-focused just on the label aspect, it'll take you out of the moment no matter what, no matter who you're with. And so I think that kindness and that acceptance of yourself is so important. Like just learning to accept and be okay with the fact that you're not straight, and allow yourself to have any and all experiences with anyone that will help you be present enough in the moment to find grounding in who you are and find grounding in your sexuality and your experiences related to your sexuality. And I think naturally that will lead you towards or away from a label. And if you're currently unable to experience things externally, like you're not in a place or a safe situation, in a safe enough place to experience things externally, to have these external experiences, like these fluid, potentially dating experiences that I'm sort of talking about, I think it's so important to also be kind to yourself and continue to validate yourself internally, because you don't have to act in any certain way. You don't have to have any certain experiences to validate your queerness. You can be a lesbian and have never kissed a woman before. I don't think that's a requirement that you have to have. I don't think that's a criteria that you have to have. It helps you figure things out, like a lot of different things related to what you like in dating or you don't like in dating, and then it also might help you figure things out related to your attraction and not what you're not attracted to. But it's also not a criteria that you have to meet, because who you are is who you are. And I think even if you're not able to explore that outside of yourself yet, and hopefully one day you'll be able to validate that internally and just validate the fact that you are queer and that you can be queer even if you don't have the external experiences yet to validate it or prove it to other people, because it's not something that ever has to be proven externally outside of you. And if you are like in a closet, so to speak, you're still in the closet, I think it's just so important to be kind to yourself and not make the validity of your sexuality and who you are contingent on outside experiences if you're unable to have them yet, because I think that'll lead you to really beating yourself up. That's a really unfair position to be in when you're already experiencing sort of the suffocation that can come with being in a closet, to like, in addition to that, beat yourself up for not having like the external validation to prove your sexuality, because you don't have to do any of that. You just exist as you are, and that is enough. There's actually something I read the other day that I feel like is a really beautiful piece that speaks to like being in the closet and learning to be kind to yourself and appreciate the way that you can still figure out things about yourself and your sexuality while being in the closet, even if you're not able to have those external experiences yet. It's called, wait, let me just find it really quick. It's called When My Closet Held My Heart by Mari. And it's about sort of being in the closet and learning to appreciate that moment rather than sort of beat yourself up over it or be cruel to yourself for being in the closet or hate it, like essentially sort of resent the closet itself. And it's on something called Ebony Tomatoes Collective, which is a literary and arts magazine for personal and political liberation by a Black intersectional collective. They have a lot of really good pieces. They publish people's submissions, and I really like reading them. And I read this a couple weeks ago, and it really stuck with me, and something I thought about a lot when I was thinking about the concept of this video. So I'm going to link it below, because if you're in that position where maybe you're in the closet or you're really beating yourself up for not yet having those external experiences that maybe you really long for or you feel like are necessary to validate who you are, I think this could be a really beautiful piece to read or impactful piece to read. Yeah, that's just a thought. Trying to think if I have anything else. I think that's it. I think that's all that I can think of when it comes to figuring out my sexuality. And yeah, I hope that this could be maybe a little bit helpful when it comes to your own journey to hear somebody else's, but it is such a hyper-specific experience and it's such a subjective experience that there's no right or wrong way to come to that kind of conclusion, like regarding a label, and there is no necessity to ever have a label to be valid in your identity or your queerness or your gayness or your sapphicness. You can just exist as you are and know that you're not straight, and that makes you just as valid as somebody who uses a label like lesbian or bisexual. So being kind to yourself, I think, is key in this situation, and that kindness and acceptance allows you to experience things presently and in the moment. And through that, I think naturally, should a label fit you, it'll sort of fall into your lap because you've been able to be present in your experiences. And maybe that presentness in your experiences will lead you down a path where you realize maybe a label isn't a fit for you at all. But be kind to yourself and accept yourself first, because I think accepting the fact that you're just not straight can be a really crucial first step sometimes. Okay. Yeah. Those are, I think, all my thoughts. So I'll end it here. And if you have any maybe advice for people who are currently having this experience, or like your own experiences that you would like to share related to this, like how you figured it out, I would love to hear it. And I'm sure there's so many people who would also love to hear it. If you want to like leave it in a comment below, or you can submit it to me. I have a website and I publish people's submissions if they want. And you could submit it to me and I can put it on my website for others to see maybe and to learn from your experience. Or if you just want a reason to talk about your own experience related to this, or literally anything at all, it doesn't have to be related to this. If there's just something you want to talk about, I'd love to hear it. And if you want to upload it to the website for others to see anonymously or not, I'm happy to do that. But if you just want a reason to talk about it, you can always send it to me and I'd be honored to hear it. And yeah. Trying to think what else. I make videos on TikTok and Instagram. I made a TikTok yesterday talking about the way that I used to feel very ashamed of being a lesbian and how I no longer do, if that's something you're interested in watching. And if there's ever any questions or topics that you have in mind that you would like to talk about or to hear about, or like something you'd like to explore, always feel free to send me a message or leave it in the comments, because I really like getting the messages, because this was really interesting for me to think about. So thank you to everyone who did send me a message asking about this. I really appreciate it. And yeah, my inboxes in all kinds through my email, whatever, are always open if you have any questions or have any thoughts that you would want to share. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.